I recently did a virtual keynote for a global company with employees all over the world, which is the primary reason we did it virtually. And during the Q&A session, we ran out of time. There were so many great questions. So I wanted to record a quick video here to follow up and answer some questions that were placed into the chat, but we didn't have time to answer in the Q&A. And the first question comes from Clay G. And Clay asked, when starting to develop these skills, and he's referring to the skills of being a coach who consistently brings out the best in team members, do you set aside team time each day to practice, or do you try to attach the practice to situations as they arise? The answer in my mind, Clay, is both. So it's very helpful when, especially if we're thinking about one particular skill, which is how I highly recommend we go about gradually getting better at the skills we're trying to develop, is try to pick one to focus on for at least a couple weeks, maybe even a month. And so part of the solution is to take time every day, some sacred time on the calendar, even if it's just 10 minutes, maybe 15, to put some conscious thought into how do I want to interact with people throughout this day to develop this skill. So, like, let's say, for instance, that you're working on being a better coach who, instead of giving direction all the time, is helping people to find their own solutions. So you could do both. You could have time on your calendar to think, maybe a couple times a week or maybe even every day for a week or so, to just think, all right, how did it go yesterday? What could I do differently today? What are some good questions to ask? What did I learn from the conversations I had yesterday, and how will I apply that today? So that when you do have conversations, you're almost always going to have spontaneous conversations with team members where they're asking for help, they're asking for permission, they're asking some other question. And when we're busy, the inherent habit is to just want to give the answer or give permission. But what a coach does is take a few extra minutes to ask some questions to really get the person thinking, to help them develop those skills, help them think strategically. And of course, the long-term benefit to you is not only to develop a team member, but of course, you also free up time, because as team members get better at solving their own problems, or if they consistently demonstrate that they are so competent that they don't need to ask for permission, little by little, you're freeing up time. Even with ideas, people come to you with ideas instead of just saying, oh, yes or no, let's do it, to help them think through, how does this fit in with our current strategic goals? And little by little, as you ask people questions like this, they come to you with better ideas. They come to you with ideas that are more aligned with the current strategy and the current strategic goals. Okay, so the next question is from Tim, and he's got a three-part last name, but for the purposes of anonymity, the initials are VDW. And he asked, do you see servant leadership and strong followership as two sides of the same coin, or are they distinct in your view? Well, in a way, they're distinct because you don't necessarily lead by displaying good followership qualities, but I think the intent of both is definitely the same coin. Because the intent of both, being a good follower and being a good leader who consistently focuses on bringing out the best in people by giving them what they need, which is essentially servant leadership. The core focus is this aspiration to be of help to others, to be of service to others, in contrast to extracting value from others. And this habit is extremely powerful, whether you're in a leadership position or not, whether you're an individual contributor or not. If you're in sales, this is huge. A customer can always feel it when there's some type of pressure that we want to close a sale, right? Whereas if we're always curious about, what does this person need? What problems do they have? How can I help them solve problems? This is much more effective if you're a salesperson. If you're an individual contributor on a team, instead of thinking, like, how can I look better than my teammates, or how can I extract help from my teammates so that I can get better, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. But a good follower is somebody who's looking to help others, right? Looking out for the best outcomes for the whole team, not just for ourselves. And this is a habit that if you build it while you're an individual contributor, which is I think what you're referring to, is this strong followership. If we build the habit of prioritizing serving others and doing what we can to help others, to prioritize the needs of the team over our own short-term self-interest, this is building the habit for highly effective leadership down the line. And even right now, actually, even if you don't have a leadership title, if you are somebody who's helping, coaching, developing junior people around you, or even peers who might be senior to you, but you have some area where you're slightly more advanced than them, by helping them, you are already being a leader, even without a title. Okay, so the next question comes from Raleigh V. And Raleigh asks, Matt, I'm curious to know, in a servant leadership model where leaders are focused on supporting and enabling others, how do you guard against that being misinterpreted as a one-sided dynamic rather than a shared responsibility for outcomes? This is a great question, Raleigh. So the idea is, there's often this thought that a servant leader is somebody who's just really nice, and maybe they're really very nice all the time, and maybe don't push people that hard. And the actuality or the reality is that it's the exact opposite. If we truly care about bringing out the best in others, our we probably care more about people being excellent and being accountable to results than anybody, because if we don't instill habits of excellence in people, help them bring out those habits or develop those habits or bring out their best qualities, help them do and be their best, hold them accountable to goals that have been set, then we're not serving them actually. We're setting that person up for pain. It's like if I'm a parent and I just let my kids do whatever they want when they're young. Let's just say I have a 7-year-old daughter, which I do. If I just let her do whatever she wants, don't want to brush your teeth? Fine. You don't want to go to bed? Ah, no problem. You know, she might like that. She may think I'm really nice, but I am not helping her. I'm creating habits that are going to set her up for a lifetime of pain. So, if we truly aspire to be a leader who serves and inspires greatness in the people that we lead, a huge component of this is high levels of accountability, but it's important that it's framed in that way. And also that we build up we put a lot of drops into the bucket of goodwill, where people know that we do actually care about them as a human being. We know what's important to them. We check in with them on how they're doing frequently. And then we add on to that the framing of, my goal is to help you thrive. I want you to find as much meaning and impact as you can at work. And because of that, I want to help you achieve the goals that you set. And I want to help you set goals that are going to push you to grow and see big impact, because that's what's going to bring a lot of meaning to your work. So I think, if we're leading in that way, this question of, is it a shared responsibility or not, probably won't even come up. However, if it does, if you have a team member who's kind of getting the feeling like, okay, I've heard you say a lot that, your job is to help me be and do my best. So does that mean it's all your responsibility? I would, the answer to that is kind of, okay. So if there's ever an underperforming team member, individual contributor on a team, I think the first place we should always look is the leader of that team. And the question we should ask is the leader setting very clear expectations, co-creating goals with those team members that are easy to measure so people understand exactly what they're doing and why it's important and how it makes an impact, and then making sure that people get the resources they need to achieve that goal or those goals, including coaching and development and maybe even training if necessary. And so then, of course, if that's all true, so if the manager's done everything she can to help set very clear expectations, give the individual contributor everything that person needs to hit the goals that have been co-created with the manager and the individual contributor together, and they're still not happening, now it's not necessarily true that it's the manager's issue. So now there's clearly an issue with that individual contributor not doing his or her part. So clearly, if we are a true servant leader, we truly care about people, we're not going to let somebody continually fail. And so if somebody's consistently being mediocre, not hitting goals on a regular basis, this needs to be addressed quickly. And so, if somebody misses a goal that's like a short-term goal, that's fine, especially if you're having weekly coaching to win meetings, which I recommend. But let's say it's a quarterly goal. This is a big goal that was set and it's missed. That's when a discussion should be had. Okay, well, did I give you everything you need? Were expectations clear? And if all those boxes are checked, then we need to ask, okay, well, are you on the right team? Are you doing the right job? Maybe we can find a different position for you. If all those boxes are checked, then again, this might be an issue with the individual contributor. And that's when we need to say, okay, well, we can't have this happen consistently. So how do you suggest that we make sure that this doesn't happen again? And let the person come up with a plan for how they're going to demonstrate that they're going to hit goals that they've co-created with you and that they've been given all the resources they need to hit those goals. And if the person fails again, this is where I recommend giving them kind of a last chance with a great practice that I learned from a colleague of mine named John Spence, and it's called the four pieces of paper. So this is where somebody's, again, all those boxes that we talked about are checked. The manager's set clear expectations. The person has been given everything they need to hit goals that they've co-created, and they're still failing. And it seems like they're in the right role. They have the skills. There's something going on where, for whatever reason, they're just not able to execute. If this is the case, and you've already given the person a chance to create a plan for how they're going to turn it around, you've given them everything they need to try to turn around, and they don't. This is where the four pieces of paper can come in very handy if you think you need to let someone go to play on a different team someplace. So on the first piece of paper, what you're going to do is you're going to ask them to write out, what would be a goal that would be that you could hit over the next period of time, whether you set that for 30 days or 2 months, whatever the time frame you decide. But keeping in mind that we don't want to let somebody who's really just not performing at all be allow that to go on for too long because it's bad for them and it's bad for the rest of the team. The rest of the team is seeing somebody consistently mediocre, and it will frustrate your team. So you create the time frame that you think is right, keeping those ideas in mind. But you say, look, what is a goal that you could hit? That if you hit it, we would know that you're on the right team, and we should definitely keep you because we would like to keep you. You're a good values fit. We like having you on the team. So what would that goal look like? Piece of paper number two, and you need to agree on this, that it would be ambitious enough and impressive enough to warrant staying on the team. Piece of paper number two, you'd ask them to write out what is everything you need for me and the leadership team to make sure you hit this goal in great detail. They write everything out. Piece of paper number three is, so what should be a reward aside from keeping your job here, which assuming you like working here, which is hopefully the case. Aside from keeping your job, what would be a reward that you think is reasonable for hitting this goal? And as long as you think it's reasonable, then live up to it, right? Like create something fun for them, some fun reward for hitting the goal. Piece of paper number four, ask them to write out what do you think should be the consequence if you create a goal, you get everything that you need from us to hit that goal, and you don't hit it. What do you think should be the consequence? Only a totally irrational person will write something other than I should probably leave this team because I'm not a fit. And so most people will self-terminate if they don't hit the goal that they created along with your guidance, and they were given everything they need. And so then it makes it very easy to say, well, after the period of time, whether it's 2 weeks or 30 days or 2 months, okay, let's look. How did it go? Did you hit the goal? No. Okay. Were you given everything that you needed? Yes. Well, in that case, it looks like you had decided that if that was the case, that the consequence would be to find another team to be on. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'll help you, and I'll do my best to try to find a team where I think you can succeed, whether it's in our company, if they're a good values fit, or if they're not a good values fit outside of the company. All right, so the next question comes from Jessica C. She asks, I like the idea of seeking regular micro feedback. Do you think it's more effective to ask a general question like, do you have any feedback for me, or to ask something specific? I definitely think it's important to ask something specific. Most people, especially when asked face to face, are not going to give you uh, very good feedback unless you really put some parameters around what you're looking for. So there are two types. One is getting feedback on something that you know you should be doing. Like we talked about meeting the 14 universal needs people have for thriving at work, as written in the book Inspire Greatness. So we should be getting feedback on how well we're meeting those needs, particularly the four core needs, which are people finding meaning at work, are they growing, is the environment conducive to excellence, and is the environment having an overall positive impact on their well-being. Aside from that, so those are what we call kind of like maintenance surveys. You're getting regular feedback on things that you know you should be doing. Now, there's also exploratory surveys, and this can be done face to face, it can be done anonymously, where you're trying to uncover issues that you don't know exist. Maybe that's a blind spot for you. And a very simple way to do this can be done one-to-one, face-to-face if you like. And I'll share a different way to do this as well in a moment. But this is actually a practice that I think was made famous at Google. I don't know if the leaders at Google created this, but the practice is very simple. You just ask two questions. And this is, again, this can be done in a one-to-one setting where you ask, what's something that you'd like me to do more of? And what's something that you'd like me to do less of? And and let people know, like, I'd like you to think of at least something, even if it's kind of minor. I'm always looking to grow. I always want to be better at helping you succeed. So I'd like to hear at least something for both of these. And then, then it kind of puts the person in, all right, I got to think about this. Now, where this can get even more powerful, and I actually learned this from a client of mine, um, where this can be done in a group setting anonymously. And this is where you get real gold. So you basically ask the same questions. You say, hey team, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to come up with the top three things you'd like me to be doing more of, and the top three things you'd like me to be doing less of. And I'd like you to come up with your own lists individually of as many of those things as you can. And then I'd like you to get together as a group and find the trends. Find what are the three most common things that you'd all like me to be doing more of? What are the three things that you'd like me to be doing less of? I'll leave the room and I'll give you as much time as you need, whether it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, depending on the size of your team. And then you just let me know when you're done, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. We'll randomly pick someone to be a spokesperson, and they'll just read the three most common trends. So this is totally anonymous, right? This is where you can get some real gold. All right, the last question is from Guga. The last name initials are UG. And Guga's the nickname, by the way. And the question is, I feel like AI is helping me do more, not less. So instead of freeing time for coaching, it's just raising the bar. How do we actually avoid that trap? Excellent question, Guga. So to me, the answer here is very simple, and that is having very clear expectations on what are our goals for a given time frame. So whether it's an annual goal or a quarterly goal or a weekly goal, the idea is if assuming that we're achieving those goals and those goals were co-created with the people that you report to, the person that you report to, um, then the time that you have left over should be dedicated to doing more coaching and developing of team members, not doing more stuff. This is one of the worst habits, I think, particularly in the Western world, is that we equate productivity with activity. So because somebody's doing a lot of stuff, they're productive. And that's not necessarily true. In fact, I would say more often false than it is true. A lot of times people are doing a lot of stuff, but it's not stuff that actually moves the needle. So my suggestion is whether it's people who report to you or measuring yourself, don't measure yourself or your direct reports by activity levels. Measure yourself and your direct reports by productivity, by goals that you've put a lot of thought into. This is what I want to achieve for the week or the quarter or the year. And when you've thought about These are some ambitious, exciting goals that we'd have to stretch for. Assuming you're hitting those goals, and we're using AI in the context here. So if AI is freeing up time doing a lot of the admin stuff, um, then once you've hit the goal, like don't do more of the admin stuff. Don't do more of the activities. There's no reason for that, because that's not necessarily more productive. The more productive things are two things I think are probably what we tend to pass over the most. And these kind of fit into, I'm sure many of you have heard of, if not all of you, the Eisenhower quadrants. We have things that are important and urgent, things that are important and not urgent, things that are not important and not urgent, which we shouldn't even think about, and the things that are not important but urgent. Most of us spend almost all of our time in the urgent boxes, whether it's urgent, important, or urgent and not important. But you'd be amazed at how much time we spend in the urgent and not important. Almost all the impact and where all the money is made, money and impact are often go hand in hand. They're in the important but not urgent. And two of the most powerful, highly leveraged activities that fit in that box are coaching and developing your team members and thinking strategically. So if you have extra time, instead of trying to do more stuff, fill that time with thinking strategically, thinking forward, trying to find the 20% in any given system that's going to produce 80% of the results, and then figure out how to apply more energy on that 20% that's driving 80% of the results. So thinking strategically, coaching and developing others, that's what we should be doing with the extra time that is created with the beauty of AI automating a lot of the busy work that we used to have to do manually. So I hope this was helpful for those of you who attended the keynote and had these questions, and I hope this was also helpful for anyone else who sees this video. Till next time, I wish you great success leading a team and driving high levels of greatness in your team by serving as a coach who helps people to thrive.